Hello, welcome to this Computer Weekly video. I'm Brian Glick, I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Computer Weekly, and in this video we're talking about secure mobile working. I'm sure many of you are facing a situation where lots of your staff are increasingly using things like smartphones and tablet devices to access corporate applications on the move, and obviously thinking a lot about some of the security challenges that presents. Now, to help me discuss some of these issues, I'm joined by Sinisha Patkovich. Sinisha is the Vice President of Product Security at Blackberry. Sinisha, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure. Now, you're working with all sorts of organisations, clearly. What are you seeing are the big issues around security in mobile working at the moment?
I speak to a lot of CIOs, indeed, quite a few of them in all the continents, I would say, both in the enterprise, small, medium, large, as well as in the government space. Typical issues are a lot of confusion around personal liable versus corporate liable, issues around how to separate personal content from corporate content on the devices, then the issues of choosing between tactical and strategic mobility. Most CIOs admit that with current BYOD scenarios they're really tactical rather than strategic, and they're reevaluating whatever they have in terms of MDM and tools every, let's say, 2 to 3 years. So I think it's a good moment for them to take a look at what's out there and what we bring to the table presently.
Okay. So, with those big challenges that they're facing, for IT leaders, what practically does that mean in terms of the specific challenges that they're having to do to tackle some of the issues you raised there?
Right, but CIOs typically want to be agile. They want to be offensive, which is a business term typically used. They want to contribute to business. They do not want to spend time plumbing. They do not want to spend time with complexities. In the same time, mobility, while making their employees happy and connected, is really about strategically enabling them to contribute to the bottom line of their company, to come up with a new innovation, new business application, new process improvement. Essentially, they need to re-engineer processes with mobility. If they do just a plain vanilla BYOD with some MDM tools, they're typically very reactive. They just get communication going. User satisfaction can be good or bad. Long-term cost is typically unpredictable, and very often they are stuck to use development tools specific to that MDM. They cannot use native development tools. So they typically end up with no real good strategy. So that's why it's tactical. So what we've been doing over the last few years is working on a product, on a platform and tool set to actually make it strategic.
I'm sure many of the people who are watching this will recognise a lot of the challenges that you described there. From some of the companies you've been working with, perhaps some of the early adopters in particular, how are they actually going about practically tackling those challenges? What are they actually doing on the ground?
We have a lot of pilots right now with BAS 10, both in the enterprise and government. So what we see, it's very easy to deploy both to Blackberry 10, which is out of the box, 15 to 20 minute setup over the air. They also deploy to iOS and Android, typically tablets. They have a lot of tablets in their organizations. And they simply test that with a focus group, pilot group, over the, let's say, 4 to 6 week period. They also look at security policies. They look at applications. That's very important. I would say that most of them in the past most of these guys have skipped the application part. Whether they have a good application strategy, whether they can develop applications. That was an afterthought, I would say. The primary focus was to make sure employees are happy and they can use their device.
So you've mentioned there some of the sort of technology benefits that organisations who are using some of these ideas are achieving. What are the business benefits are they finding that are being delivered as a result of going through that process?
There are all kinds of business benefits. You look at the long-term cost savings. You have governments that went with this scenario and they essentially do not need to have employees carry 2 devices. They have 1 device for classified and personal. They lower the risk dramatically with this scenario because employees tend to use and go the route of the least resistance. So if you give them a tool set that's just slightly more difficult to use than something that's insecure, they're going to go the insecure route. So you have to make it extremely convenient for them. Security in terms of usability needs to be completely transparent, and this is what we specialize in. As soon as the security present some kind of obstacle, whether time obstacle or you have to do a few more swipes or you have to click somewhere, people tend to avoid that. Has to be built in, 100% transferable, and that's exactly what we do.
Clearly there's a lot for CIOs to think about, and you've worked with organisations at every stage of implementing and meeting some of these challenges. But for an organisation that's in the very early days now, if there was one piece of advice that you would give them that they need to keep in mind about achieving secure mobile working, what would that be?
If I was to summarize everything I heard over the last few months from the CIOs just traveling around, I could actually put it in a very interesting triangle. So they are under pressure to meet user expectations, so they have to keep user satisfaction. Typically that means either they give them devices that make sense for the organization and the user, or they allow BYOD. They have to make that choice. Interesting thing about this is once they make the choice and go with MDM, the question is it tactical or strategic? Are they stuck in this kind of deployment? That's a very critical question. If they're stuck, they're not agile. If they're not agile, they cannot be good in what they do. So they need a tool to allow them to be very flexible between corporate liable, fully locked device versus BYOD versus a device that's maybe somewhere in between. Let's say corporate liable with personal enabled. Something that allows them to manage the risk while giving both employee ability to do personal things and do personal apps and have fully separate personal content, as well as being fully able to manage the corporate content. So that's one side, user productivity and so on, and satisfaction. The other is business objectives. At the end of the day, you don't do a tool that you don't do anything in the enterprise that doesn't allow you to advance your position in the market or lower the cost or whatever the organization is about. So they have to keep track of their business objectives. What is the long-term cost? Are they able to improve business processes? Can they re-engineer business processes? Is the platform they chose able to allow them native development so they can essentially come up with new apps to improve the business? If not, they're again stuck in very tactical mode, which is again an issue. The third thing they have to think about is the risk. Is the platform and the tool and the mode of deployment increasing the risk? If it is, do they use governance? Do they use best practices from governance? Does the board know about this? Does the CIO know about this? Is there enough of prudency there? So they essentially need a product, or they need a solution that can essentially allow them for all these three things to happen. So they need some kind of a sweet spot over there. Otherwise, they cannot be strategic in their mobility. And I think the time has come that CIOs can switch from tactical to strategic with confidence.
Great. Sinisa Patkovic from Blackberry, thank you very much for sharing your experience of working with all sorts of organisations, helping them with secure mobile working. That's all we've got time for on this video. I hope you've been able to take away some useful tips and best practices about how to help secure your employees' use of mobile devices. Thanks for watching.